listening to Ciminelli Chats, where we aim to share the latest Ciminelli company news, real estate industry insights, and announcements. It's no secret that Buffalo, New York has been going through a resurgence these past few decades, but post-pandemic, many were left wondering if the momentum that was built is enough to continue growing our economy after a 2-year pause. Matt Hubacher, Vice President of Research at Invest Buffalo-Niagara, and Ed McGinn, Director at Newmark Ciminelli, joined us for an episode to discuss what is next for the Buffalo-Niagara region and share their thoughts on the economic development opportunities that are on Western New York's horizon. We are particularly energized by this conversation, and we hope you are too after listening. So to start, can you both introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your experience in commercial real estate?
So my name is Ed McGinn. I am a director here at Newmark Ciminelli. I've been with the company for 18 years now, which is kind of crazy to think it's been that long, but I've done quite a bit of industrial work as well as office and pretty much touched every part of real estate.
I'm Matthew Hubacher. I'm the Vice President of Research at Invest Buffalo-Niagara. Invest Buffalo-Niagara is a regional economic development organization here in Western New York. Our service territory is the 8 counties of our region. I've carved out a niche for myself as the go-to economic developer for commercial real estate issues kind of generally and industrial warehouse opportunities specifically. I also staff Invest Buffalo-Niagara's Western New York Industrial Real Estate Development Strategy Task Force. As the region's private nonprofit economic development organization, Invest Buffalo-Niagara essentially fills 3 roles. 1, we're lead generators. So we proactively market the regional economy and our assets to companies, both domestically and internationally, in an attempt to generate interest in doing an expansion project here in Western New York. 2nd, we're information sharers. So we don't own any real estate, but we can connect the companies with the brokers and developers who do represent real estate. We don't provide any incentive programs, but we can connect those companies with the entities at the state level, at the local level, who do provide incentives. And we can help them identify those programs and lead them through the application all the way through to an award. Last but not least, we act as project managers. We act as the conduit between the company, right? A company who has an economic development project that they're looking to site, somewhere in the world, and the product being the Buffalo-Niagara economy. We act as that conduit to make sure that the company has all the information they need, they're getting introduced to the right people and programs that will make their expansion project a success, making sure all that's done in a timely manner and in a cadence that's required to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, and that we're making it, at the end of the day, we're making it as easy as possible for that company to make a decision to invest in Western New York.
And one of the greatest things about my position with Newmark Ciminelli is that we get touches from a lot of companies from all over the country. We have a global network of brokers. I get to be able to touch a lot of those companies that are looking at Western New York through our Newmark affiliation. I would also aid in the selection process for bringing those companies and work with Matt and other economic development professionals to make it as attractive as possible for those companies to move to Western New York.
Can you define what industrial real estate means for Western New York?
So it runs a gamut, right? Everything from, pure warehouse operations all the way to, the heaviest industrial properties and sites in our region. That can mean everything from a third-party logistics provider to a e-commerce fulfillment warehouse, up to a light manufacturer, all the way up to maybe a steel fabricator or metals processor. Within that, large range could be food and beverage processing, medical device manufacturing, and really any production or warehouse logistics operations that a company would require.
So you touched that there's a variety of industrial uses, obviously. Is there a specific opportunity that's presenting itself right now for our area?
Within the industrial and warehouse sector, Invest Buffalo-Niagara has never been busier. We've seen interest across all sectors, across all geographies, domestic and international. Right now, I would say 90% of the new opportunities we generate are generally in the industrial warehouse space.
Wow.
And an industrial market is one of the ones that's the hottest at this point right now. It's been the one that's been the least resistant or the most resistant to fluctuations in cap rates. And so it's still a very attractive investment for people. It trades well, and it's continuing to increase throughout the country.
And it seems like a natural shift post-pandemic.
There are a lot of things that have created the demand for industrial space, not just in Western New York, but throughout the country. And some of the things that you probably see every day is you're on buying things from Amazon. Well, those things need to get somewhere, and a lot of it is that there's that last mile delivery, but then there's also new technologies that are coming out that people are working with. As we continue to evolve with what we're doing, you have solar operations, you have high tech manufacturing. A lot of those companies right here in Western New York, where a lot of it started. So it's been great.
Yeah, Buffalo is a known Rust Belt city. We have a lot of roots in industrial space, as evident when you're driving down I-90 or even Route 5.
Sure.
So when was the last time that we saw this kind of demand, and how does our past translate into an industrial-focused future?
So I've always hated the term Rust Belt because it just indicates that industry left and we became impoverished because of it. And I think Buffalo has found a way to really heal from that. Really, I mean, if you go back, in the 1950s, we were major aircraft, aerospace design and production, Great Lakes shipping, grain storage, steel production was super high. And because we had all of the good rail, we have multimodal in terms of the lakes, Great Lakes shipping and things like that, and highway. And that's some of the same things that made Buffalo such a great industrial city back then, we still have. And so, our thought is that the future of Buffalo industrial is extremely promising.
And looking at that from a regional economic perspective, so the regional economy and the makeup of the sectors of Western New York's regional economy looks more like the nation today than any time in its history. So to Ed's point, 70, 60, 50 years ago, our regional economy might have been 3 or 4 times as concentrated in manufacturing and production than that of the nation. Now we're a diversified economy. Also picking up on Ed's point, the term Rust Belt irks me because I feel like in general, it harkens back to thoughts of holding on to some distant past of what our region used to be. And I think it's high time that as a community, as a region, we start thinking about the Buffalo we want to become and not the Buffalo we were 70 years ago.
Are you seeing those specific requirements that companies are looking for industrial space that we can use to our advantage when we're trying to bring them in?
There's been a trend in the last 10 years that industrial and warehouse projects on the real estate demand are getting larger and larger. Unfortunately, the availability of those buildings in the region is getting smaller and smaller. So one of the conversations that Invest Buffalo-Niagara helped start a few years back through our Western New York industrial real estate development strategy was the idea of building speculative industrial and warehouse development. Thankfully, our commercial real estate development partners at Newmark Ciminelli and other development firms across the country have taken that call and played a leadership role in bringing new speculative development to the market. But quite frankly, as these real estate requests from the companies with whom Invest Buffalo-Niagara is working get larger and larger, the options that we're able to present from an existing available quality workspace are fewer and fewer.
And for our listeners that may not be familiar, can you define spec industrial space?
So spec industrial space would be something that's built without a tenant in tow. So we're talking about, we're building a building that is a general building that is suitable for industrial use. That could be built for warehousing, it could be built for cold storage, it could be built for manufacturing. They all kind of have different types of buildings, but when you build on spec, you're building with the hope that you're going to be able to bring a tenant in there. And one of the things that Matt and I have, we've crossed paths on this so many times, is that as a need comes in through Matt, and they're looking for a building that already exists. The inventory that we have here in Western New York is old and outdated. And so, seeing the new development come in is what is going to be able to attract these companies to come to Western New York. As I stated earlier, we have everything with the multimodal transportation, things along those lines. It's actually a very affordable community to live in. So there's a lot of great things going for Buffalo, with the exception of we don't have the product to be able to compete with some of these other markets.
And that's an important distinction that Ed made, because building on speculative development in Western New York is a departure from the previous tact, which was essentially if come. Like, if a prospect comes to Western New York, commercial real estate developer, will build that company a building. Well, this is now 2023. Speed to market is of critical importance. And quite frankly, the timing does not work on a if-come build, a build-to-suit, so to speak. In Western New York, we're talking at least a year to have a building, a build-to-suit option be delivered to the market. Most likely it's much longer than 12 months. And at that point, if we don't have the existing real estate, whether it be an existing available building or a speculative development in construction or ready to be delivered, that company is going to go to the next region, state, country. I always say in the economic development game, no product, no project. Either you have the real estate that fits the company's needs existing on the market or under construction, or you don't. And if you don't have a project.
That's true. It's a great way to look at it.
And another key aspect of that question is, quite frankly, the risk tolerance of the commercial real estate development community. Historically, Western New York has been a risk-averse market. And that's why it's so important that industry leaders like Newmark Ciminelli, are taking a position and planting their flag to say, we believe in this market, we believe in its energy, and we're willing to risk our, capital and our time and our team to build speculatively. Taking a risk of building a facility without a tenant in hand, but having the confidence that because of the region's growth, because of the interest that we're seeing, that building's going to be filled in very short order.
Absolutely. And we completely agree with that. I mean, there's, we've seen more development on the East Coast simply because of the fact that, they did renovations to the Panama Canal. If you recall, a while back, you had all those ships waiting to deliver to the ports out in the West Coast. Now we're finding that they're shifting some of that to the East Coast. So it brings a lot more opportunity, I think, to our region. And that includes the ports that have already spent a lot of money to upgrade their facilities. Philadelphia and New Jersey, who have invested quite a bit of money. That starts there, but it has to make its way across the country, and we're a great stop.
Are there any examples or success stories you can think of related to industrial use in real estate in Western New York from, say, the past decade?
Certainly the most obvious and high-profile example is going to be the redevelopment of the former Bethlehem Steel property into what we now call Renaissance Commerce Park, which is, of course, in Lackawanna. In my opinion, in one economic developer's opinion, it is the premier industrial site in the United States, most certainly on the East Coast. When you talk about the advantages at Renaissance Commerce Park of a remediated brownfield with multimodal logistics capabilities, immediate to downtown Buffalo, with several incentive programs, both at the state and local level, to support business investment and job creation, that is by far the highlight of site readiness and site preparedness in the industrial space in Western New York. We've already seen a handful of companies successfully locate at Renaissance Commerce Park. Many of those were assisted by the Invest Buffalo-Niagara team. Specifically, I'm talking about Lanita Design, Sucro Sourcing, and Welded Tube. And we're going to see in the very near future some additional investments and developments in industrial commercial real estate at Renaissance Commerce Park. And I believe that the companies that we will be locating at Renaissance Commerce Park will be transformational, not only for Lackawanna, not only for Erie County, but for Western New York as a whole.
And to go off of Matt's point regarding, that location, it is by far a superior location to most locations here in Western New York because of what it offers. You have the rail lines that are there. You have the ship canal that is there. And you're right on Route 5. So you have very close proximity to everything that you're looking for. In my opinion, it's the best location to build a park like that and revive our industrial market.
And related to that, are you seeing any emerging trends or indicators in this first quarter of 2023 that can help us plot the roadmap for industrial success for our future?
So one of the things I touched on earlier, and this is going to be throughout the country, but we're seeing a huge demand coming in for cold storage. Okay, so cold storage is, you're doing your e-grocery, your e-commerce, things along those lines. You need to be in that last mile delivery for a lot of this stuff. And so cold storage has really taken the industrial market by storm in terms of a new emerging trend that, just has to be there. So that's one of the things that we see, at least in the first quarter of 23.
The general trend that I see is a continuation of an incredible amount of interest of companies that could generally be called production manufacturers. An emerging trend, which is interesting, is a lot of the companies that Invest Buffalo-Niagara is working with today, while yes, they're manufacturing companies, they are in sectors that did not exist 10, 20, 30 years ago. The electric vehicle economy from a consumer market did not exist 30 years ago. Battery storage at a utility scale, solar photovoltaic panels, wind turbines and component parts for those wind turbines. That was not a thing 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So not only are those sectors new to the global economy, let's also keep in mind that when we say manufacturing facilities, this is not your grandfather's Bethlehem Steel workplace. These are very clean, high-tech facilities where machinists and production operators and engineers are working every day to produce goods that are going to be used in every facet of our lives. And that emerging economy from a high-tech production perspective is going to set the Buffalo-Niagara's economy off like a rocket ship. I would venture to guess that the Buffalo-Niagara economy of 2040 will be something that you could never dream of. It's going to be night and day from that Rust Belt past we talked about earlier, that we're going to be going from a Rust Belt, woe is us community to look at what they did in Buffalo. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it really is almost marrying the two, technology sector and this industrial sector and seeing that we need this, the demand is there. So this is a huge transitional moment for commercial real estate.
Absolutely. And you know what, to Matt's point about what we're talking about, what these companies are doing, they're not going into these old plants where the floors have been oiled and are dirty. This is why the new product and the spec product and even the build-to-suits need to start happening here because they need those clean facilities. They need certain filtration. They need certain types of HVAC, and those types of things are not available, or at least are too expensive to try to retrofit an old facility into something like that.
So what's driving the decision-making process of these manufacturers, of these high-tech manufacturers with whom Invest Buffalo-Niagara is working? Well, certainly there's a lot of aspects that go into that site location decision-making process. I already touched on one. Do you have the product? Do you have an existing building or of quality that fits the needs of that project? Check the box. Yes, you move on to the next. Do you have a qualified, skilled pool of workers that can staff those occupations that the company requires? Yes, you move on to the next phase. Then one of the most critical pieces to any site location decision-making process for manufacturers is the availability of existing electric infrastructure. And not only are the projects with whom we work, their space needs are getting greater and greater, their electric needs are also getting greater and greater. It is not uncommon for us to work with companies who are looking for 20, 30, 40, 50 plus megawatts of electric demand. That's a lot of power. Mm-hmm. The good news is the electric infrastructure assets in Western New York are vast, they're built out, and there's capacity there. not only is there capacity, but there's also operational cost savings involved, not only with the reduced cost of the market rate power here, but when we're able to package that with an incentive from the New York Power Authority and the Western New York hydropower allocations, hydroelectric power that's generated at the Niagara Power Station in Lewiston. There's a pot of electricity that's reserved for economic development projects within a 30-mile radius of that power plant. When you're able to bring that incentive program to bear, the operational cost savings on the electric side make Western New York a very viable location for these business investments.
Do you see Western New York, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, almost transitioning into kind of an impactful region the way Silicon Valley was for tech? I mean, will this be the industrial hub of the East Coast?
I think there's a chance for the region to totally remake its industry mix to industries in high-tech manufacturing and alternative energy generation that we've never even dreamed of. Whether that's renewable energy generation from solar and wind, whether that's utility scale battery storage, whether that's making component parts of solar cells, or potentially some major players in the semiconductor supply chain. I think the types of companies that we're able to attract locally and the types of companies that we can help grow locally are going to totally transform the regional economy on a very large scale.
And why do you feel that industrial space should be the focused effort in this area?
Well, I think nationally we're seeing the demand is starting to reach the supply levels, or the supply levels are reaching the demand levels. When we talk about Western New York, we still have a great amount of demand and we don't have the supply yet. That's why it's important to do what we're doing as far as these spec buildings, as far as making land available to do these types of developments and really grow what Western New York is capable of doing.
So we have this momentum. What do we need to do to continue to attract companies on the scale of an Edwards at the Western New York stamp site, Plug Power at the Western New York stamp site, a Tesla? We need to have available industrial space that is modern, that fits the needs of those high-tech manufacturers. And with the leadership of Newmark Ciminelli and other commercial developers in the region, I know that space is going to be available, and I know that Invest Buffalo-Niagara is going to continue to be able to attract interest in our region from those types of major corporations. And at the end of the day, economic development's a team sport. So whether you're an economic developer, a commercial developer, an incentive provider, all we're trying to do is bring investment to our neighborhoods and good jobs to our neighbors.
Well, thank you both. This has been incredibly insightful.
Thank you.
Let's get some industrial space in Buffalo.
Sounds great. Things look like they're about to change.
No doubt, for sure.
Thank you for listening to episode 11 of Ciminelli Chats. To learn more about Invest Buffalo-Niagara's services for those currently doing business or looking to do business in the Buffalo-Niagara region, visit buffaloniagara.org. If you're considering leasing industrial space and want to inquire about available properties, Ed McGinn can be reached at emcginn@ciminelli.com. That's emcginn@ciminelli.com. Until next time.